Hi, everyone, and welcome to our third rendition of VC Sports and Sport Hiatus Office Hours. I'm excited to be joined by Darren Rovell of the Action Network and our longtime close friend, John Kosner, who has returned for a second overall segment and is going to lead a riveting conversation. I just wanted to do a quick overview and intro for those of you who are new, give you a little bit about what we're up to and what we're trying to create, and welcome you. So I always like to say the faster I get out of the way and Darren and John can talk, the better we'll all be. So let me give you a couple minute intro and move out of the way fast. So we launched in 2011 as NYVC Sports with Deepan Parikh at Courtside Ventures. The concept was you had every entrepreneur in the world at hackathons and meetups. You had every investor at Davos and Stein Erikson Lodge and other environments for investor conferences. And you had the sports business community at Super Bowl and Sports Business Journal and those types of environments. And those three communities just weren't speaking. There was very little M&A. There was very little innovation or entrepreneurship in the world of sports. Fast forward 9 years later, and that has changed significantly, which is wonderful for all of our careers. And it's great to have everyone here. Since that time, we've launched San Francisco VC Sports, Boston VC Sports, and London VC Sports as our event business. Sport Hiatus is our editorial voice during this crazy, unique window in time where we're all trying to balance our health, our life, our work, and we send strong, warm, loving, caring messages to everyone that hope everyone is doing well. And if you're able to carve out some time to join us for an hour, hopefully we can distract you with some good fun around the world of sports business and so on. And this is our third office hours, and there's a lot of great plans coming up, and we'll talk about that at the end. I'll come back on for a minute to talk about that briefly. I just wanted to say, if you're tweeting, please hashtag at Sport Hiatus, at NYVC Sports, at Darren Rovell, who's as strong a social media presence as there is in our space, and at Jay Kosner, who is insightful in everything that he does and a close friend of all that we do. We launched a thing that I think is fun. We've returned it. In the bottom right corner of your screen, you'll see a tip jar. It's there if you want to throw a few dollars in the direction. It helps cover all the things that we do. And every dollar that we generate goes right back into building these types of things. So hopefully you enjoy. I'll come back at the end and let you know about some of the events that are going on in the future and some of the things that we have planned. And with that, I'll get out of the way. So Darren and John, it's great to have you. Thanks so much for joining us. Take it away, please.
Hey, thank you, Jeff, and thanks to NYVC Sports. Good afternoon, sports fans. Darren Rovell and I are thrilled that over 700 people have signed up today. And first of all, we hope that you and your families are doing well and that all is fine with you. We appreciate having the time this afternoon to spend with you. As Jeff mentioned, you can leave questions, and we're hopeful of getting to as many of those as we can. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. So there's no one that I have had more fun working with, nor enjoyed watching their career trajectory more than Darren Rovell. Darren joined ESPN.com in 2000. I remember seeing him in the office, fresh out of Northwestern University, the only person other than me at the time wearing a tie. And I felt sorry for him.
That's true.
I was trying to figure out, like, who really cared about sports business other than me? Well, it turns out a ton of people do, especially when you bring the energy, innovation, good humor, and can-do spirit that Darren does. Darren is a dogged and fair reporter. My former boss, Russ Granick, who was the deputy commissioner at the National Basketball Association, a terrific and a very sober guy, called me in the midst of a contentious NBA collective bargaining agreement negotiation to say that Darren was really smart, and when he called, he asked consistently good questions. It was the only call like that I ever got from Russ. Darren once asked me what I loved about ESPN, and I said, among other things, I really enjoyed our embrace of Wide World of Sports type events, like the Spelling Bee, the Little League World Series, and the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest. The Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest, he said, interesting. So that July 4th was sweltering. And when I turned on the TV, who was calling the event for ESPN? Well, none other than Darren. And of course, he was wearing a blazer and a tie.
Of course. I still remember that sweat, John.
And Darren, this headline from page 2, it just kind of says it all. Kobayashi's dominance, a lot to swallow. Most of all, Darren embraced what was new. Social media platforms like Twitter and Instagram, and we'll get into those, and data. When I would negotiate e-commerce deals for ESPN.com, executives from great companies like Fanatics, StubHub, Ticketmaster, and AccuWeather would volunteer to share data with Darren. Data storytelling, Darren was there early. When Darren left ESPN in 2006 to join CNBC, I was in such denial that when we would correspond, which was frequently, I would end every single message with him saying, "When are you coming back?"
That's a true story.
Once during Darren's hiatus, I was asked to organize a digital media industry dinner. We got a really good turnout and we needed a moderator, so there was only one choice. And Darren joined us at a restaurant called Trattoria del Arte on 57th Street and 7th Avenue in New York City. Those familiar with the restaurant know that it is famous for the giant nose above the awning. That night, however, the only thing bigger than the restaurant's signature schnoz was the piece of veal parmesan that Darren ordered. Not only were we all agog at the veal parm when it arrived, but then Darren, who was ahead of his time, took out his phone, snapped a photo of the dish, added a comment, and posted it on Twitter. By the end of the meal, the retweets and comments about the veal parmesan numbered in the thousands. Darren rejoined ESPN and ABC News in 2012, and we worked together until I left ESPN 3 years ago. Last year, Darren also left ESPN and he joined the Action Network, where he rejoined forces with two of my other favorite former ESPNers, Action Network's editor-in-chief, Chad Millman, and their head of product, Matt Restivo. So Darren, welcome to NYVC Sports Office Hours. I think an appropriate first question is, how did you get here? What did you see in the coverage of sports business that so many others missed? Take us through your path.
First of all, I'd like, you are my sensei, so I've always had tremendous respect for you, and there's a reason why I've chosen to work for you. So thank you for that awesome introduction, and I love us together. I would say the one thing that comes to me is I just love sports business. I love the business of sports. And while I grew up as a fan, while all the Jordan stuff that's coming back kind of just reminds me of going to hotels and waiting for athletes to come off buses and getting signatures and stuff like that. I gravitated to looking at the green pages of USA Today as much as the red pages. And the green pages were the money section, and that came before the red pages of the sports section. So I just loved it. And I think in like 1998, when I was starting to come out of college my junior year, I didn't really care whether people cared about sports business. I did. And I wanted to make it something. I'm not going to say I foresaw a point where fans would love sports business. I think they do, and I think they think it's necessary today. But I was just doing what I loved, and I thought there was a way in covering business that was fun, and it was key because business kind of had a negative connotation. So I got the chance at ESPN, as you know, and kind of worked as hard as I could. And I think the world kind of surrounded me with what happened, which is that at some point as a fan, you can't even understand the game anymore if you don't know the business.
So staying relevant in a time of uncertainty is our topic. Relevance. What did being relevant mean to you when you got started? And what does it mean to you now in the midst of COVID-19?
So when I got started, being relevant was like, when I felt like I had a great story, I would like fight with the editors behind the scenes to get on the front page of ESPN.com because they kind of controlled my relevance. And I felt that it wasn't necessarily a meritocracy. This is before we had all these heat maps that told us what was good. And we were based editorially in data, which protected me. In the beginning, I wasn't protected. So you could ask anyone at ESPN.com back in the day, whether it's Andy Katz or Kevin Jackson or John Marvel, any of the editors or executives, I would go around fighting saying this story should be on the front page. So it's kind of funny how that's how I remember it. And then, after social media, when I came back to ESPN in 2012, it was a totally different story. We had heat maps. It was a meritocracy. They did realize that sports business on the best of sports business stories, damn, does it pop. And it was supported by the fact that I had so many Twitter followers. If I'm just a boring business reporter and I don't have something that people are interested in, well, why would so many people follow me? So being relevant to me, I have always loved the niches. My dad was a niche guy. He knew the science and he knew the marketing, and that's how he made his business. And I've always been a niche guy, but there's, as Under Armour's proven and so many businesses have proven, there's power in the niche. And so I've always said, how do I get relevant by being the biggest fish in a smaller pond as far as of the reporters that cover sports. And so relevance is just not being that anchor who is reading the teleprompter and people think, not good, not bad, or have no feeling about him. To me, being in the middle is the worst place to be right now. You're better off having 80% of the people hate you than being in the middle. And so that's one of the reasons I've been able to rationalize people that have problems with whether I talk about business too soon after someone dies or if something happens, whether I'm talking about business and that's ruining their relationship with sports because they say they're thinking about how they love sports. So I would say I always just, I'm genuine. I don't force my relevance, but I feel like I know what people are talking about and how I can insert myself in a way that is smart and makes people want to talk about what I talk about.
Okay. So let's go to the tail of the tape here. Hang on a second. See?
I want that veal parm again.
Yeah. Hang on. So you have on Twitter over 2 million followers. What's going on in that picture at the top of your profile?
So that's the Super Bowl in 2016, I think. So when the Super Bowl comes up, the Super Bowl is my Super Bowl. And I am in my office for the past. So I went to every Super Bowl from 2001 to 2014, and then realized that because of Twitter and because of everything that was going on with commercials, it was actually more relevant, more important for me to be home. So I spend 50 hours ahead of the Super Bowl preparing what is normally between 130 and 150 tweets. And so I have to have lists hanging in front of me so that I know when to push the button. It's like a command control center, and I don't want to miss a thing. And at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm in the moment and not having so many scheduled things that I'm not really reacting to what's going on. So that's the busiest day of the year for me, which is the Super Bowl.
Okay. And on Instagram, you have, 45,000 followers, another huge audience. What's the difference in the two platforms? How do you think about them?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I mean, so one of the things that I've done as far as like zigging and zagging, so everyone kind of on Instagram thinks about photos. They think about, oh, it's a great photo, and that's really what makes things work. For me, I've tried on the posts, on the permanent posts, I try to tell really long stories. I try to tell stories basically as long as Instagram will let me go. And I think people look at that like it's a surprise. And because my brand has always been based in history and anniversaries, in telling you something you didn't know. And so on the posts, I've kind of said, all right, I'm going to have longer posts and tell you something that you didn't know. And that's kind of been my brand. And that's what, on Instagram, that's not what most people stand for. And then Instagram, I was late on Instagram. I think I came about 2.5 years ago. And that was the week that Instagram stories came out. And because it came out that week, I said, I could be the best in the world at doing this. So let me over index on Instagram stories, mix family life, which I really don't share much on Twitter. It's a different environment, with things that I'm doing in the moment, little snippets of things. And it was kind of based on what we were doing years and years before that at ESPN with our amazing on-scene project, which I'm still proud of to this day.
So last 28 days, take us through this.
So I've had 950 tweets in the last 28 days. This is according to Twitter analytics. Average is about 34 a day. 193 million impressions. So that's the amount of people that have seen my tweets. So almost 7 million a day. This is on the high side. I normally average about 160 to 180 million impressions a month, whether it's people being on Twitter for longer, people using Twitter more often because it's an easier way to get the news that they need. People are definitely on Twitter, retweeting more, looking at more over the past 2 months, for sure.
You've always been distinguished by using data to make decisions. So how do you look at these numbers? How do you think about it?
So I look at like each tweet and see how it does. I like to have a post-mortem on kind of what worked and what didn't. And I look at pretty much every tweet. At the end of the day, I said what worked and what didn't. And maybe why didn't it work? Sometimes it's timing. Like I know times, usually like I know people are sitting down with their computer before a game, watching in front of the television, have the computer in their laps. That time is usually great. 8 to 10 in the morning is good. So different tweets go out at different times. Anniversary tweets usually go out in the morning so people can think about them and say, oh, this is the day in. Obviously breaking news tweets go out when it's breaking. And then there's some strategy on either timing or what I'm using. Am I using a photo? Am I using a video? Am I using a GIF? Am I straight retweeting someone? Am I, quoting them? How does it work? So I definitely base everything in data, not only Twitter, but I look at all my hits for all my stories, and see what people love, because it's amazing. Sometimes you think you know what is going to be loved and it's not. And so I feel my job as a journalist is twofold. It's one, to do the stories that I'm responsible for doing as a sports business reporter, and two, do stories that people care about. And I think where some reporters go wrong especially in this era, is they don't spend enough time on doing stories that people care about, because people say often that they don't care about those stories, John. If you say I don't care about, like, enough with LeVar Ball, and I told those editors at ESPN.com, no, we are going LeVar every time LeVar Ball opens his mouth, because people are saying they're sick of it, and I'm looking at the numbers, and behind closed doors they are clicking. Do not succumb to the pressure.
You weren't staying in your lane, right?
No, I was not staying in my lane. That comment doesn't go well with me. Stay in your lane.
So to wit, let's talk about the top 2 tweets this month, because they have nothing to do with sports, right? Here's the first.
I mean, it's a Baskin Robbins. I forgot where it was, but it's a Baskin Robbins with their signs saying "No relation to Carol Baskin" of Tiger King. It got 121,000 likes. It was posted. It was sent to me. It was posted 1 million times on Instagram, but it was not. Hold on one second. I'm in the middle of something. Good job. Can you close my door, Roddy? No relation to Carol Baskin. So that's one of those things. Is posted 1 million times on Instagram, but not on Twitter. And sometimes the platforms don't talk to each other. So that went completely nuts. Signs do really well. Church signs do well. Signs in general. There are a lot of funny people who should be comedians who are working at restaurants and car dealerships and other things. And, my goal, another part of where I feel like I've nailed Twitter is, like, I will be the conduit. You send me something, I'll give you credit. And, I've turned people into like mini messengers of what I'm doing, because they like the credit. And, there's
He was the start of the hat tip, right?
Yeah, I can't exactly. I can't possibly get around the country or see everything. So I'll look and you tell me what's great. But this is obviously one that went nuts.
So Darren, we just been joined recently by Aaron LaBerge, who's a good friend of ours, the head of technology for Walt Disney Company, all of their direct-to-consumer stuff. And his big project is Disney Plus. Disney Plus fixture in our household, especially after my 12-year-old son Luke sweet-talked me into letting him watch The Simpsons, which brings us to tweet number 2.
Right. So there's a whole thing going on, and I've been at the forefront of it. Actually, so when the Disney 20th Century Fox deal went down, I woke up that morning and said, wait a second. I remember a Simpsons episode where it had a sign that said 20th Century Fox, a division of Walt Disney. And I put that out and it went nuts. And this was just sent to me by someone saying, okay, so check this out. May 6, 1993, which happened to be the date I tweeted this. Okay, a Simpsons episode plot. So what had been this had been out on Twitter. Okay, this had been out on Twitter for days. Okay, I went and looked back and saw what day the episode was on, and I waited a day for it to be the day that the episode was on. So it's 27 years later. That could be the difference between 20,000 retweets and 1,000 retweets. The fact that it's on that day and a Simpsons episode has the town of Springfield getting sick with a flu that originates in Asia, and then the town wants a vaccine, and murder bees show up essentially, and of course that relates to the hornets that are now supposedly going to kill us. So as in The Simpsons predict everything. The funny thing is with The Simpsons, people comment, they say, well, yeah, they've been doing the show for 30 years. It's going to hit on something. And I'm like, do you realize what people do with Nostradamus? Like the Simpsons is much more specific than Nostradamus. Nostradamus is quatrains. Like you can twist and turn into everything. The Simpsons are like really specific things, and it's nailed like 20 of them. I don't care how many episodes you've done. This is greatness. And I think people think that by how many times they've retweeted it and liked this.
So you're one of the stars of the Action Network. So you're obviously well-versed in over-under games. So we're going to do a couple today. Fantastic documentary now on ESPN, The Last Dance. Over-under. Will the ratings this weekend for the final 2 episodes of The Last Dance be over or under the average for the 2 debut episodes on April 19, which averaged around 6 million episodes? Over or under?
6 million viewers. Yeah, I think it's probably under, but I would say that I take the under, but I would say that I'm remarkably impressed by how well this is held. The interesting thing about The Last Dance with me is that I thought I knew why people so for example, let me take you back. The Scottie Pippen part. So a lot of people called me and texted me, and there are people on Twitter saying, I did not know all this happened with Scottie Pippen. And so, I was like, really? You didn't know that there was this? And then I realized I was at Northwestern from 96 to 2000. So I had read the papers. So I was reading Rick Morrissey and Skip Bayless and Rick Tellender and all those people. So every day I had access to the story. As you know, coming to ESPN in 2000 and running our show, there were no national columnists available on the internet. And the National had gone out 10 years before. There was literally no way you were finding out about Scottie Pippen except occasionally when some columnist wrote about it. But if you were not in Chicago, you wouldn't have known. So I feel like I've known most of this stuff in here, except the Rodman Vegas part. Definitely did not know that. But it's been fun to discover how other people have said, hey, I didn't know about this and that. And following the memorabilia of Jordan has been just completely fascinating.
So let's talk about that for a second. Into the arcane. March 19, 1993, a relatively unknown guard for the Washington, I think they were the Bullets in those days.
Yeah, the Bullets. Yeah.
Bradford Smith lights up the Bulls, including at times Michael Jordan, for 37 points in Chicago. Michael then shares what appears to be an apocryphal story that LeBradford Smith came up to him after the game and said, "Nice game, Mike." So infuriating Jordan that the following night, when they had a back-to-back, the following night in Washington, D.C., Jordan lights them up for 36 points in the first half. Okay, so this is a great part of the documentary, but it has to be an inspired mind that would find the ticket. What's the story here?
Well, no. So, I mean, I had never heard that story. In fact, I had never heard of LeBradford Smith. And when I went back, I realized that LeBradford Smith had 5 20-point games in his career. This was one of them. He had 37. It was his career high. But he had those 4 of the 5 in a 7-game stretch. So think about that. That's why I didn't really hear about him. But it's an amazing story. And listen, someone would have put this ticket up three months ago, it would have gotten $1. This guy was asking for $199. I typed in LeBradford Smith the next morning just because I was like, is anyone cashing in on this story? And sure enough, you have that. I think for memorabilia, tickets are going to be something that is going to be on the rise of collecting tickets. That's something that hasn't really been out there. I'm looking for my. All right. I don't know if can you give it to my screen now?
Hang on 1 second.
Okay. So this is Kobe signing his last game ticket. And there's right now, the population report says that there's only 13 in the world right now, at least the ones that have been graded, signed Kobe tickets from their last game. So Kobe was a friend, and that's the reason I have this, not to make money, but it's an amazing, it's kind of cool. The tickets are just something that a lot of people didn't save, but now I think they're going to be a cool collectible.
So one thing that strikes me, and you mentioned Kevin Jackson, John Marvel, Andy, the Star Waivers and the early people at ESPN.com were really focused on just making the most out of stories, and there was more there. So I've been struck by the sort of merchandising you're doing around the Michael Jordan documentary, including some live programs.
Yes. So, I have a love for memorabilia. When we saw this skyrocketing of interest and dollars, we really didn't think that there was any sort of national place for it. So I got together with Chad Millman, our head of content, who, as you mentioned, was also my boss at ESPN under you. And we started producing an hour live Twitter show. We've gotten over 100,000 viewers for each of the last 3 or 4 shows. We've brought on people with incredible stories, including last week brought on Rick Probstein, who is a guy who sells like $35-40 million worth of cards a year on eBay. And he sold hundreds and hundreds of Michael Jordan rookie cards. So people love that. And we've had some giveaways, and again, it's so strange. I don't think we've ever had something in memorabilia like this where a guy has been retired for, he hasn't played in a Bulls uniform in 22 years, and yet everything is going nuts around Jordan. So I think people have really had a whole lot of fun, and we felt like there was an appetite. This is what's so great about this environment, that you can create. And I would say in this era of staying home, at least I've never been more creative, because you have to create things. When things aren't happening, you have to create things. So this is one of the things that even after the MJ stuff is over, we're going to continue to do a memorabilia show.
That's it's great. So you're how big, new subject, how big is sports betting going to be in this country? How do you help the Action Network win?
So I help the Action Network win. Let me take the second question first. I help the Action Network win partly by virtue of who they are to start, right? So when I was going from ESPN to a gambling outfit, I had asked myself, well, I was writing 20 stories a week on gambling. Could I write 40, 60, 80, 100? And the answer was yes. I did not, as a journalist, want to be at a place where they were selling picks. I did not want to be at a place where they were an operator, where they were taking your money. The Action Network is just a high-end information media site for sports bettors that enables them to be a better. And so I do it through my coverage of the industry. I cover the sports books. I cover the legislation. So you'll know, whether it's coming to you or not. And so, and I also help come up with the great ideas. Our product team is unreal. I know you're a fan of hackathons, and we had a hackathon.
Yes, totally.
Literally 14 ideas out of 20, but right now, you can at the high end, you can say, what's the odds of what's the percentage chance that when it rains during a college football game, that the under hits in the last 25 years? And then where is it raining this week? It's the true quant stuff that people do on Wall Street with stocks, but with betting. And the one thing that's really struck me with betting, having worked at CNBC for 6 years, it is so much more fair than the stock market. And people are like, what are you talking about? Like, that doesn't seem, it gets such a bad rap, but it is so much more fair. And let me tell you why. At the end, there's a win and a loss. In the stock market, after earnings are reported, it's not clear. Did they beat the whisper number or not? Amazon had a great quarter, but they said they're donating all the money to COVID, and now we're not going to get. So again, at least you have a win or a loss when you're betting on sports. You don't have that. And then you also have a lot more information. Companies are only required to disclose information 4 times a year. So I've loved it at the Action Network. As far as the first question, sports betting, I mean, I'm sitting here in the Vegas of the East, New Jersey. I have 18 apps on my phone. I do live betting. It's almost like I'm not even a huge bettor, but I just do it all just to follow along so I know. And I mean, I think betting is going to be one of the few industries that pops back almost immediately. Sure, there's less disposable income, but people have been commensurately bored and they want juice and they want to be part of the game. And especially if they can't sit there, they're going to want some action.
So I'm going to go to some questions from our audience. Number one, we'd love your take on fanless venues, both in the near term and over the long term, as well as how technology impacts this. I had a chance to talk to Kendall Baker at Axios Sports on this topic yesterday. What would you enjoy seeing most to solve for empty venues?
Well, I mean, you have to reach the guys at home. You have to have the stadium at home. And I know there's one solution out there. I don't think it's ready to be announced yet. That's probably going to blow some people away. I think there's want to have the feeling of being in the crowd, even when you're not. So that's one. I would also say that it's very important for the teams to reach out to the fans and make them feel special. I will say that it depends on what sport we're talking about. With football, I feel like they're insulated in terms of people won't go away because people are fans of the NFL. And it's gotten hard to go to the game because if you go to the game, you're missing all the other things. And people have gotten so comfortable with being at home. So I think it's all about the feeling to be able to do things to tell fans they're special, to be able to extend your sponsorships and to get the sponsors to the fans in some way. Give them things that they wouldn't get normally. If it was a coupon for 20% off, now it's a coupon for 50. If it was before you get your pizza if they score 21 points the next day between 2 and 4, well, now you have a little bit more flexibility. You ask that pizza place, could it be for the entire week? So I think it's all about making fans feel welcome, even if they're not welcome inside.
Under over, okay? The next time that fans will go en masse into stadiums and arenas, okay? February 2022. Before.
Oh God, no. Oh God, no. No. I have to go. I go under on that by a mile.
Okay.
Yeah, by a mile.
Okay.
I think people will be in. I think people will be in mass in venues in 2021, sometime in 2021.
Darren, what's the number one question you wished you were asked but never get as it relates to the successful growth of your social media following?
Well, the question I always do get is, how do you deal with all the hate? That's the question I always do get.
How do you deal with all the hate?
I'm confident in what I say. I'm confident in what I say. Listen, I've made mistakes, probably 15 out of 175,000. I'm willing to take that ratio. Like bad mistakes, they've happened. But I guess what people don't ask me is on that level, and I'm just going to be really honest with you. When people say, when you've made, people haven't said this, but I wish people would ask me this. When you've made a mistake, is there any sort of consistency to that? Like, and I would answer, there is. if you're not 100% focused on what you're tweeting at that time, just don't tweet. You got to be 100% focused all the time. And that's a piece of advice I would give. And again, I don't think people ask me that. Trying to think of like what would be a good thing to.
I mean, what about like, do you think about time of the day that you post?
Yeah. Yeah. People ask me that all the time.
You're doing this in such, you have it down to some sort of system here.
Yeah, I mean, there is a system. I wait for tweets. I have them lined up 6 months in advance. I kind of joke with myself that if I were to die, God forbid, my tweets would still be coming out, and it'd be kind of eerie. And I'd tell people, no, don't listen. In my last will, just keep my tweets going. Just like I want to still be. And then I'd probably trend like every time, like, oh my God, Rovell, a tweet from the grave again. Yeah, I definitely time them out. And there's a lot of strategery to everything.
So I know we'd have to pry this out of your dead cold hands, but talk a little bit about all these different collections you have. You told me you collect checks. Yeah,
so we have some checks now. The thing is that let's see if I can find. So about 5 years ago, I'm all about arbitrage. So 5 years ago, I was at the Sports Collectors Convention in Chicago, and a guy says, "Here are 300 Giamatti checks, Bart Giamatti checks, former commissioner of baseball. They're all the same." I'm like, "What do you mean they're all the same?" He's like, "Well, they're all $65." And I'm thinking to myself quietly, I'm like, why would they all be $65? There's checks in there that obviously have more relevance than the other. There we come back to the word relevance again. So this is a check. It is, I'm rifling through the Bart Giamatti signature. I'm rifling through, and it says that it's to the Chicago Cubs for $42. And on the bottom in the corner, wait here, let's see here. The Giamatti signature is right there. Right? And then, okay. And in the corner, look at the memo. What does the memo say? Can you see that, John?
4 tickets for $88.88.
Okay. And underneath?
Commissioner Ubroff.
Now, do you know what 8888 in Chicago is?
No.
It's the first Wrigley night game.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm mesmerized by Manufacturers Hanover because it used to be our bank. It used to be our family's bank.
There you go. Yeah. And when the Mets gave out bats for Bat Day, they gave out full wood bats to us kids, full size with Manufacturer Hanover on it. Anyway, so that kind of started this all, to be honest with you. That kind of started this all, where I was like, you know what? I'm a storyteller. I want checks with stories. So I started kind of doing different things. And so I'll give you a couple that are just amazing. So this has a wrap on it, but this is Reggie Jackson buying World Series tickets 5 days before he became Mr. October. And to buy the New York Yankees, and he writes on it like half of them are for business, which I think is funny. This is one that is just pretty precious. I don't know. Can you see names on there?
It's to Nick Bollettieri.
Nick Bollettieri, and it's Vince Lombardi cutting the check. So essentially, you have the greatest football coach of all time cutting a check to the greatest tennis coach of all time. And so it was cashed in Puerto Rico. And so I bought it first for way less than I should have paid. And I texted Nick Bollettieri and said, "What's the deal here?" He goes, "Oh man, that brings back memories." I'm like, "He's really paying you $14.64 for a tennis lesson?" He's like, "Yep." He goes, "I was the tennis coach for the Rockefellers in 1964 in Puerto Rico, and Vince came to visit, and I gave him a lesson." And I'm like, "And the Rockefellers don't cover that lesson? It's what horrible hosts." But so that's a classic one. I'll give you a couple more.
One more, and then we got other stuff to cover.
All right.
The
All right.
Lakers, right? Denzel Washington.
So this is Denzel Washington paying for his Lakers courtside seats, $74,000 in 1999, which is the first year in the Staples Center and the Lakers championship season. Don't ask me how these things ever get out there, but if they do, I'll find them. One more little. So sometimes I'll collect miscellaneous things because I'm always monitoring these auctions, and there's always one thing that's sitting there that no one wants, but it's worth a lot of money. So a couple of years ago, Neil Leifer, the Sports Illustrated,
the great photographer.
So a lot of people who wanted his sports photos had gone to the auction and paid a lot of money. At the bottom of the auction, I think it was the last item. It was Neil. He was the photographer for Rocky III.
Rocky III.
Okay, yeah, which is my favorite Rocky. And so this is his shot sheet of every single scene in Rocky III.
Wow.
Every single fight scene, like hundreds of pages that I got for $200 because people were like, I'm here for photos. And I'm like, okay, if you want me to steal that, I will.
Yeah, I think people are going to be contacting you to bid on that afterwards. Sporting news.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, someone said to me, what's the thing that is not accessible on the internet, and how do you get all these old clips? And I said, well, the truth is that new media is old media. There is so much that has not been scanned. So I bought thousands of sporting newses. SIs are a little bit better. Inside Sport, some of these magazines. So what you're looking at right now is that I opened up this morning. It's a mint copy of May 13th, 1959 Sporting News. And it's amazing. You just go back and see how business was in less complex times. And the nuggets in here are just tremendous. Like two teams playing each other flew on the same charter airline, like just things that are just such hokey, like Wilt Chamberlain was late because he got a traffic ticket on the way to driving up to Philadelphia, like just amazing things that people today would be just aghast at about what went on in the less complex times of sports.
It's great. So back to Twitter, which is a favorite subject for both of us. If you were Jack Dorsey for a day, or let's say a couple of weeks, what would you add to Twitter? What's missing? What would make it better?
I need months. Listen, they have been very important to me, but I tweak them because I still can't believe it's not a freemium service. Some 5 years ago, I wrote a Medium story that I know you know about, where I said they were leaving $3.5 billion a year on the table, easy, just by having a freemium product where power users pay certain amounts of money. The fact that TweetDeck is used by so many people, and certainly professionals to schedule out things, there is not a mobile version of TweetDeck. I would easily pay thousands and thousands of dollars a year for amazing power tools that made me better. And it would be freemium again. So it'd be free for people who want it to be free. I don't understand why they don't offer that. It makes no sense. There's actually no negative to it. So that's my big pet peeve, that I feel like there should be. I make my own control center, but I think that there's, Twitter could do a whole lot better.
And who are some of your favorite follows that you'd recommend?
I don't know. I can't believe Rex Chapman. I mean, honestly, it was hard for me to believe that, and this is probably a bad thing to say, but that an ex-player could be so good. I mean, he is so good at gathering what people love. I was like, is this the same guy who was in the Charlotte Hornets uniform? Like, he's amazing. So he's like one of the favorites of mine. And then, I follow like 2,500 people. I try to cull down the list every once in a while. I would advise people to do that. Don't really get too big. I mean, a lot of people would argue 2,500 is ridiculous, but I would say cull down your list for it to be, I do laugh at the people who have 2 million followers and don't follow anyone. I'm like, yeah. How is Skip Bayless great at like not hearing anyone? Well, he doesn't follow anyone. So he sends out his tweet bomb like LeBron's the worst player I've ever seen, presses return, and then walks away and goes to have dinner. I mean,
right. He has no at replies, I guess.
Correct. So yeah, no, I do love Twitter. I can't believe it's been like, it's almost 11 years. Yeah, it's 11 years for me. Which is funny because people are always like, well, what happens if it's not the next big thing? That was the first question people were asking me. Like, you spend so much time on it, and what happens in the next? Well, then I'll go somewhere else. I mean, there's no risk. I'm not wasting my time.
No, I'm a big fan of Twitter. I find it very important, and I feel like in almost any industry, the smartest people are on Twitter. It's been remarkably helpful in terms of getting data and information here in COVID-19. Yep. So a couple more fan questions. What are you looking forward to most with the slow return of live sports?
Oh my God. I mean, this fall, I told my wife already that she's not seeing me. When sports return, can you imagine, John, the Masters and college football and the Ryder Cup and the NFL and everything together? It is going to literally be the greatest. And that's really the hope that we have to have, right? I mean, we have to, in this uncertainty, in this when's everything going to return, the only thing that keeps us sane is hope. And so I think the best thing to do is just hope for a fall, to be gifted with the fall that we could never possibly conceive. And I just hope things get resolved with, that make things a little bit more clearer, because right now I still don't think it's clear.
Betting question. Sport Radar announced that they put out 14% more live data in April 2020 than they did in April 2019 because they are craving live data for gambling purposes. They come from darts, table tennis, virtual games, etc. Will all of the sports gambling operators survive 2020? Will there be multiple mergers due to lack of action?
Listen, I think that it depends on how long we go. I think if we get back to September, you won't see a lot. I think there's going to be attrition in the industry. I think there's going to be cannibalization, obviously. I mean, I have 18 choices for who I bet with in New Jersey. Not all of them are going to survive. So I think that there's not like massive carnage as long as we get something going by this fall. Because it's buoyed by hope. I mean, just look at DraftKings. DraftKings last year had $142 million in net losses. There's obviously not a lot of live sports, and believe me, darts and ping pong and Belarusian soccer are not carrying the day. Even though I'd love them to, as a fan of all niche sports, I'd love for cornhole to tell you that cornhole is carrying the day. It is not. But even with that, George Soros invests, and yesterday DraftKings goes up 7%. They've been up like 60-70% since they went public April 23rd. So I think a lot of gambling and money and investors in gambling are boosted by the hope of the future, and they'll be saved again unless we don't have sports in the fall.
Okay. So our very last question, and I think somehow this comes from Jeff Volk, who got us started. Tell us, Darren, about what you love to do most. Perhaps a baseball card opening challenge, 1987 tops.
Jeff, are you inviting yourself to try to beat me at this? Can we get you in here?
I I am in for a challenge. The last time you and I did this was at a Red Sox Yankees game, and I got crushed. I haven't prepared a lot since then, but
There's no
I think it was-
preparation.
I think
So
it was
as-
just bad luck. 700 to 1,000 cards in a
Yeah,
in
I
a
know.
overall series. Let's go. I'm in.
Okay, so we have a sealed pack of 1987 tops, just so you know. I have the entire box that you could cut out, the Gary Carter on front. Okay, so here's the rules. Because I believe I'm uniquely talented at this and better than you, I am going to let you get the first look at every card. Okay.
Yeah. Does the
So-
loser have to eat? Does the winner or does the loser have to eat the gum?
I'll send you the gum. No, it's pretty much, it's definitely the loser. I've gone back to 1981 gum, and I'm happy to say I survived.
Okay.
Not too great though. Okay, so
By the way, I think our new VC Sports mantra or tagline is "I love us together."
that's
what you-
great.
that's how you started it with John when
I
you
do.
said, "Let's do this." So maybe when it comes to entrepreneurs, investors, executives, and all of us, I think "I love us together" might be our new tagline.
Give me 1 minute. I just got to go to the U.S. trademark and no, just kidding. So here's the gum for anyone interested.
That's good.
There's the gum. All right, so I'll split the pack. I'm an expert at this. Hold on. I'll split the pack. I'll go to the bottom here, and I'll
Okay.
use the Spring Training Fever card. You could win a trip to 1988 Spring Training to block the. Okay, so here we go.
I feel like we should be doing this tomorrow. This is Throwback Thursday.
So that's your first card.
All right. I'm gonna go with Mike Pagliarillo.
That's a pretty good guess. I don't really have one better. Ooh, Butch Weiniger.
Never heard of him. All right.
Okay.
I'm gonna call that a victory for getting a good guess out there.
Okay. Here's the next one.
That's an Indian. We'll go with second baseman, it looks like. Maybe a first baseman. It's a lefty, perhaps. Tell by the glove. We'll go with I'm gonna go Julio Franco, second base, Cleveland.
I think that is a trick. I think that's Joe Carter.
Oh, 1-0. I'm losing. All right. Looks like a second baseman.
All right, here we go. Wow, it's too young. It's too early for that guy that I was thinking. This guy who I'm thinking.
Oh, you know, I'm gonna mess up his name, but hopefully you'll be kind to me. Troy Poole or Poole, Troy Pule. Pule.
You're thinking it's Terry Poole.
Yes, that's exactly what I said.
John Miserock.
Oh, for 3.
Okay,
All
let's
right.
move. Let's move faster.
I'm somewhat regretting that's Vince Coleman. That's Lance McCullers. I'm gonna go with
Tito Landrum.
Tito Landrum. All right.
Okay, 2-0. Oh, this is
Really think I should have prepared.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that. That's a nice Philly. We'll go with Raul Ibanez. No, not Raul Ibanez. It's
Way
a
too
Raul.
early.
It's a Raul. It's a Raul.
I think
We'll go
it's
with-
Glenn Wilson.
I want all the Raúls.
Rick
Yep.
Shue? Who
All
is it?
right.
Glenn Wilson.
You got
Rio.
it. Glenn Wilson.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm getting
you
killed
got to
here.
get this one, or else people will stop. They'll be like, "You are so bad."
Number 20. That's Wally Backman.
It's Howard Johnson.
But I delivered it with confidence. I feel pretty good about myself.
When does the mercy rule kick in?
I'm about to run around my house naked.
All right, this one's too tough because I wouldn't have gotten that. Okay, here, this one. Here we
I
go.
might have.
No, you would not have gotten that.
Where are my Red Sox? That's Gary DeSunsay.
I think that's Dick Schofield.
Jesus.
Five.
Mercy.
All
All
right,
right,
here
what else
we
you
go.
got? Two
All right,
more.
I'll give you a clue here. You might have known him recent. He's a manager, current manager.
Current manager for Cleveland, perhaps?
I'm not gonna tell you that. I mean, come on.
I don't know who that is.
Jerry Narron.
Okay. This
Okay.
pack is not doing me any favors. Much
All
like
right,
the last time. I like
hey,
it.
you got one. You finally got one. Here you
You
go.
got a Bo Sox
Here you
for
go.
me? All right, that'll work. Oh, there's Barry
Nope.
Bonds.
Yeah, that is a 107-pound Barry Bonds. Very nice.
Yeah, right, of course.
Okay.
All right, one more, Darren.
One more. I'll give you a clue. He is the first
Well,
entry.
I like the Boggs. Thank you for covering up my Bostonian.
I know. Well, come on. He is the first.
Flanagan?
He's the first entry in the baseball encyclopedia.
Ooh. It's got to be like an Aaron or an Alexander. I would have gone Boddicker.
Oh, actually, he's not. Aaron is before him. He's not the first.
Alexander, Larry Alexander.
I think it's Don Ossie. All right.
All right. So Jeff, we're going to turn it back to you.
I'll send you the gum, and you have to do a live licking of it. Okay.
You know what? You got yourself a deal. I feel like I could have done a little better with some American League players there. But
I love us together. Don't worry. I love us.
I love us. Yeah. Look,
Darren and I want to thank everybody for joining us, and Jeff, we're turning it back to you.
So thanks, I apologize to anyone watching for the beatdown I just took. I will do a little bit more research, and Darren will try this in round 3 when I've given it a little bit of a glance. Couple of thoughts. I've got my chicken scratch here from having listened to what you guys have said. And first of all, what a fun, thoughtful, lighthearted, but also real and timely conversation for what's going on in our industry. If the quarantine has meant a rapid move to digital, then those who are being innovative and creative and thoughtful and leading are going to win. And you two are amongst the top of that pile and that group. And on behalf of everyone in the sports industry, the entrepreneurs, the investors, the executives, truly thank you for all you do. I tweet back and follow and enjoy quite frequently. Now, one thing I want to mention, there is nothing better in my day than when a family member, a cat, a pet joins a Zoom call. So thank you for that as well. That is amazing. We should choreograph that into everything we do. There's no apologies. We should just thank you because that's amazing. The last thing I wanted to add on before I go into my notes, for anyone who has watched Cornhole, the storytelling that they've built around how player X has used the limp-wristed throwing style or the overhand backhand. And the storytelling is amazing. I couldn't turn it off for about 45 minutes. I was like enthralled. So maybe Cornhole has a chance. I don't know. To that end, I wanted to thank a lot of people who were involved in just making this happen. The VC Sports Advisory Board, Deepan and Joe and Tom and Blake and Dan and Asher and Jeremy and Mandy, Donna, John, Terry, Joe. There's a lot of people that help make this happen. It really does take a large group. This vision started with Carlo DeMarcus thinking about, wouldn't it be great if we celebrate what's we all know there's a hiatus in sports. Wouldn't it be great if we could celebrate what's exciting during this window? And that's really what sparked this. The LiveLike guys have been putting up polls and sentiment analysis and live blogging and all kinds of tools. So Mihir and Justin and Lawrence, thank you. As far as Twitter is concerned, we've talked a little bit about that today. Let's watch it stock soar. In the meantime, follow Darren Rovell and John Kosner and Global VC Sports, and we love your interaction, your thoughts, your highlights. While we welcome the love, Darren also welcomes the other side. Just don't be in the middle, I guess, is what I took away from this conversation. And then lastly, I just wanted to do 2 things. One, we're working closely with a lot of partners. We believe everyone's a partner. So as there are conferences that exist, there are no shortage of virtual conferences, but as there are great pieces of content that exist in our industry, we want to highlight them. At 1 o'clock, which is basically now, our friends at Sports Tech X are starting their Sport Tech Radar, all about North America with Stadia Ventures and MLB and some others doing some startup pitches as well. So anyone looking to bounce from here to there at 1 o'clock, please do. They're great friends. They put out amazing content. We really love those guys. And then lastly, this is my sort of wrap up at the end of each session. Our goal is to support leagues, teams, athletes, broadcasters, publishers, brands, agencies, partners, entrepreneurs, investors, and so on. We are one team. Sports don't stop. Sports fans don't stop. May is the month we're starting to see not only live sports resume with golf, beginning of announcements around tennis, European soccer, baseball's got some announcements. We're seeing more and more around that realm. So keep innovating, keep being creative, and we will be back next week. So May 20th, our next office hours, 12 o'clock. Same Wednesday, the 13th of May. It'll be Bryant McBride, Rachel Jacobson, Lou Shipley, and Frank Sapovitz. So it's going to be a great conversation around looking around the COVID corner. So thank you everyone for your time. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you soon. We'll be putting out clips, and be healthy, be well, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you truly, John and Darren. This has been great.